Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Jeremy, this is the week. This is it.
Week. Oculus has come.
It has arrived. The CV1 consumer version 1 has been out for almost a week now. That's incredible.
That's right, yeah. But we've been waiting for years, and here we are.
Wow. So let's take a trip back memory lane. Back in August 2012 was when the Kickstarter launched for the first development kit. And then we got that early 2013.
Yeah, a real quick turnaround from that. It was pretty impressive.
Really, really impressive. We were one of the first backers. You were backer like
109.
109. And here it is, that DK1. Wow. This is pretty amazing still at the time.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Rotational tracking, had basically cell phone grade parts on here, a good IMU, and the potential was there.
I remember loading up Unity, and I built a small snow hill, and I went to the top of the mountain, and I put that on, and I stepped in there, and it was clear, even though there was no translational tracking, that was amazing, and that this was going to clearly be something.
And then from that potential, we went to the DK2, with Development Kit 2, which was out about a year later at GDC announced right after the Facebook acquisition was announced, and no Kickstarter for that. We were able to pick it up. That added a camera and positional tracking, and functionally, it is what allowed developers to make games for the Oculus Rift.
Yeah, they said for a long time this would be all developers needed for the consumer version whenever that would come.
And it has come today. So this is the DK2. What we want to do is, instead of reviewing it like a straightforward, here are your speeds and feeds, what we want to do is tell you guys answer some of the most commonly answered questions, or asked questions that we've received about the Oculus Rift. Now, we've done a lot of preview coverage about it. We've used the CV1 at events before, at preview events. We've been using it for about a week now. There's going to be some ongoing testing, but a lot of people in the VR community, especially with some other headsets coming out, the Vive coming out next week as well, have questions about this product in particular. If you're new to VR, what makes the CV1, first question, what makes the CV1, the Oculus Rift, different from the previous headsets, from like the DK1 and the DK2?
Right, well, many things. There's a higher resolution screen. In fact, there's two screens. There's one for each eye. There is a different type of lens called a Fresnel lens, which, it has these ridges in it that creates refraction without so much curvature. Has headphones that are built on, which are pretty good, surprisingly good. It's much lighter, it's more comfortable. So they kind of took the DK2 and made everything better and lighter and a tighter form factor.
Yeah, and it really feels and looks like a consumer product.
Yeah, sure. I mean, especially I just unhooked my DK2, and there were quite a lot of wires with that developer kit, and taking, wiring them, bundling them up, putting them back in the box. Hooking this one up, I was very appreciative of how simple they've made the cabling.
Right, one cable with two plugs, HDMI and also USB 3. That's also for power. And then there's a camera, of course. The camera no longer does need a sync cable. It also has one single USB 3 port that just plugs in. And then for the controller, there's a wireless remote and also the Xbox One controller.
Right.
Comes in a box. It's a beautiful box, really easy to set up, and we got it running in less than an hour.
One thing I would point out about the Xbox controller is that a lot of people were concerned that they didn't need it because maybe they already had an Xbox 360 controller or an Xbox One already hooked up. Well, you can still use your old gamepad. An Xbox 360, I find, works perfectly. The Xbox button works with the home button. Everything works 100% over a USB 2. So if you don't need this, you can go ahead and put it on eBay and make a little money back.
Yeah, so you mentioned that there are two screens in here. And we know the combined resolution is 2160 by 1200, which is the same resolution as on the HTC Vive. They're using two OLED panels. We know the panels are 90 hertz, running at 90 frames per second minimum for the games, and they're low persistent panels, which means they flicker in between the frames, so you reduce that judder effect. We also know that they're basically Samsung-made panels with a Pentel sub-pixel arrangement. So one of the other big questions we also get is, do you see the screen door effect? And I think we can safely say it's effectively mitigated.
Well, I mean, I think you can always see the screen door effect with every headset I've tried. And the thing is, it's up to the game developers not to draw your attention to that. As long as you don't have small text or something that relies on such like a dense pixel density, you're going to be fine. I mean, you really don't even notice it. You don't think about it because what you're immersed in is the space, behind the screen door, I guess you could say. It's not a problem at all for me in any of the games that I've played.
And I think when you think about its resolution, the screen door effect isn't just a factor of resolution. It's a factor of the actual display technology. The screen door effect, of course, is the grid lines that separate the pixels themselves. When you're talking about a sub-pixel arrangement, what actually matters is the fill factor of those sub-pixels. How much of the pixel is grid versus how much of it is actual light and color. Because of the sub-pixel arrangement, it actually doesn't look like, if you even put a magnifying glass to it, it doesn't look like just squares. It's more almost diamond-like is what that screen door effect looks like here. Plus the use of the Fresnel lenses, which allow to give that FOV. The Fresnel lenses actually do a little bit of fusion, so you see more of like vertical or horizontal lines slicing through the pixels as opposed to individual grids.
Right.
And again, like you said, once you're focused on the content,
it disappears. What about the Fresnel lenses also created a new effect called, like, people are calling Godrays.
Yeah.
These light rays that seem to come out of certain lights on the screen. What do you think about that?
Definitely noticeable, but it's noticeable really in high contrast scenes where it's black background with very light text. And unfortunately, there are a couple instances where you have to see that. When you're seeing a loading screen, for example, and you see Oculus Studios pop up. That's black background, that's white text. It doesn't show up when it's white background and black text. Like when I'm playing a drift and it's just white background, that's not there. So, and again, it's up to the game developers to try to avoid that. I don't think you can completely mitigate it. It's on all the headsets.
First time I saw it, I thought it was a special effect.
Right.
Like, I mean, it really does look like an interesting effect. I think you could actually use it to your advantage if you're actually trying to go for that. But like you said, it's only on certain backgrounds.
I thought it looked like it was a fuzzy or blurred out screen to me. And I thought there could have been like some grease or oil on it. But once it's full color, once you're actually in the game, it's not actually something that bothers me from minute to minute. And then putting it on, in terms of the fit and finish and the actual ergonomics.
So much more adjustable than the DK2.
Yeah, something we want to get across is it's just comfortable to put on. I think they put a lot of R&D into how this fits on. And the way we've been putting it on at demos, and it isn't exactly how we've been using it in this past week.
At demos, they have it set up and they put it on your head, but they're also waiting to put it on someone else's head 20 minutes later, and it was just on someone else's head. They can't afford the time to adjust every little minute, detail. But when you're putting on your head, there's 4 or 5 different things you want to put in alignment so that you get it just right.
Right. It's a Velcro straps on the side, but the whole thing, it's a stiff rod here where it can extend actually pretty far back. So if you have a big head and the Velcro strap on the top is pretty long, so if you have a tall head, it'll totally fit. You align it to your head, and what's important is actually this back harness. Cradling that in the back of your skull. I think too many times, if this is too high up, then the weight is on the front. But once this is cradled on the back of your head, which actually, if you look on the side, that's how it's supposed to be.
Exactly, and that's not necessarily apparent the first time you put it on. It's easy to get this thing on and wearable and usable without having that so far down. You just are having to tighten it up on the front a lot more, which causes Oculus face.
Right, which you have Oculus face a little bit, that O ring around your eyes. And even once you lock down those Velcro straps, there's a little bit of give. There are springs in here, which make it easy so you don't have to readjust the Velcro straps every time. You just pull the springs a little bit, put your face on, and then put it over.
It allows you to keep the screen away from your face as you put it on and then let it nestle in.
Yeah, it's also pretty lightweight. There's 2 types of fabric material. There's a soft fabric on the outside, but actually it has a rigid backing, so this isn't really malleable. It's a hard plastic in the front, but on the inside, this is that transforming fabric that I think the Oculus talks a lot about, which actually does a lot to block out light and allow for the lenses to shift back and forth.
And is that in order to match up the user's IPD?
Yes.
Their interpupillary distance?
That's right. There's an adjustment mechanism on the bottom of the Oculus, which lets you then stretch all the way up to, I think, 69 millimeters or so.
How did you find the setup process for the IPD? Did you like that?
Yeah, there's a crossbar it shows. It's a green crossbar, and you're supposed to align both the vertical lines on the crossbar and the horizontal lines. I found it easier to adjust the IPD vertical lines, I guess, and then the horizontal lines, which you do by tilting the headset up and down, and that's where you find that sweet spot. It's actually not that difficult to find a sweet spot on this. You know once things are pretty clear.
And the sweet spot is actually wider than it was on previous step replicants too. There's a wider area of focus in the middle of the lens.
Another question we get asked a lot is, outside of ergonomics and associated with it is, can you wear it with glasses?
Yeah, can you?
And Oculus says yes, and I think technically you can. So with glasses, like I have glasses that are pretty wide. It's all about the width of your glasses, not about the height. Because the facial interface, which is this foam piece on the inside, which you can actually pull out and replace, the facial interface is what's kind of cupping your glasses in. While my glasses technically fit, and a lot of wide rim glasses will fit on the inside, it actually pinches my temples, the sidebars, pinch my temples when I have it on. And because I want the lenses to be as close to my eyeballs as possible.
So you get the wider field of view?
To get the maximum field of view, I'm always worried that my glasses themselves are going to rub against the lenses.
Sure.
So I actually wear them without my glasses.
Okay. Do you think that they'll eventually start making lenses for prescriptions?
I don't know. I don't think it's easy to, because the lenses are a pretty expensive part of the components. I don't see them letting you swap out the lenses like you could with the previous DK versions or lens A, B, and C.
Right.
But maybe there'll be some third-party intermediates where you can actually they'll be molded, and so you can put them in here.
Or like friend of the show, Will Smith. He bought new glasses that would actually fit inside the headset that are just smaller.
Like Steven Spielberg glasses, kind of narrower, smaller rim glasses, and those will actually work. Or you can wear contacts, of course. Now, of course, there are tons of games. We've been playing the launch lineup. There are about 30 games. What do you think are your favorite games so far?
Well, just to mention, there is a whole storefront for the Oculus called the Oculus Store. And initially, it kind of looked like only games that were available in the store could run on the device. But you can actually go into the settings and unlock something that allows you to run any third-party game that wants to use the Oculus, which is an important thing to note. But as far as what's available in the store, I would say that there's I think a lot of content for launch. I wouldn't say there's a lot of great content for the launch. There's a lot of mediocre content, and there's 2 or 3 titles that I think are standout. My favorite title is probably Lucky's Tale.
Okay.
Which was it's a first-party Oculus game that they've had in development for a couple years now.
Yeah.
I want to say it's a third-party. It's a third-person platformer where you follow Lucky around and you control him. It's very happy, very friendly. The music's great. The sound effects are awesome. And when I played that game, I just thought this is. I really felt like this was the next big thing. I've been using VR for years now, and yet this is the first time I played a game where I thought, okay, this is the kind of feeling I had when I first played like Mario 64. It's just a happy, good feeling, but this is a whole new realm. This is like a new level of engagement. I thought it was super cool.
And I love Adrift. I think the first person, the feeling of presence is best felt in a first person game. And you feel presence, of course, in third person, like the God Mode games. Yeah. And I like things like Air Mac and even Defense Grid. But being in the first person and playing a game like Adrift, where I've played the desktop version on a 2D screen, and then which you can also play on with the Oculus copy. But playing in the spacesuit helmet, looking at the HUD in the near field, looking at the particles come at you, the debris come at you, and then being completely immersed. I love that feeling.
Those are opposite sides of the intensity spectrum, too.
Yeah.
Like Lucky's Tale is a very comfortable game. The camera easily follows Lucky, whereas you're in first person and you're doing 6 degrees of freedom, even rotation. So if you're looking for what you might have always thought of as like a VR immersive game where you're transported into a first-person experience, definitely check out Adrift, absolutely.
And then, of course, anyone who pre-ordered got Valkyrie, and that seems to be probably the hottest multiplayer game available. And there are a couple multiplayer games, like Air Mac is multiplayer, there's VR Online, Tennis Online.
Yep. Blaze Rush.
Blaze Rush was a fun racing game. Some of these games, like Radio G, Blaze Rush, have been available for the 2D screens, flat screens, traditional flat screens for a while. And I think porting them over to the VR actually adds a lot. There has been a complaint that, maybe some games should be developed for VR from the ground up.
It's the question about a lot of these games, like why do they need to be in VR?
Yeah. But I think even just having the VR element, if it's designed properly, and being immersed in the play space of the world, being able to examine the game assets up close, look at the characters, look at the environment, you're just paying so much more attention to the game content.
I think that there's certainly an argument to be made there, but every time I think that before I put the VR headset on and jump in there, I realize that it's the difference between playing a game on a 2D screen, a video game, and having an imaginary toy set. It's like if I'm playing Blaze Rush, I have this fantastic, amazing sci-fi racing toy set in front of me that I'm engaging with.
And it's a game that I necessarily wouldn't be super excited to play on a flat screen.
Right.
But in the VR space where I can look through and look at the cars up close and see further down the track by turning my head
it's like
naturally.
Having, like the old slot car racing tracks that you used to build, electric controlled. It's like having that, but times a million.
Yeah. Well, in terms of games, there's also the issue of controllers, and people are asking, is gamepad VR gaming worth it? Or is it just going to become second-class gaming once track controllers, the Oculus Touch
Super
comes
good
out?
question, yeah.
I think it's still compelling. Now, I wish the Xbox One controller was like the PSVR controller. Like I wish this itself was tracked.
Yes.
And you can see a representation of the controller for button mapping or just having one more point of association. But the games like Air Mech, like Defense Grid, like even Adrift, all play really fun with the gamepad.
I think you're right though. If it was tracked, as it is like with PSVR, you can communicate to the player a little bit better, and the player feels more immersed and comfortable in the environment because they have another component of their body that's tracked. Those are important things, and that is unfortunate about that. And that's one thing that the motion controllers will bring to the table in touch once that's out for the Oculus, and that is a part of Vive at launch.
Right. My question is going to be, whenever that comes out, what will happen to the gamepad games?
Yeah.
Right? Will there be gamepad games?
Absolutely. No, I have no question, and in fact, I think Oculus is betting on that with this release, and that's all the games that have been in development for years now since the DK1 came out. They've all been gamepad developed games. I mean, more or less. I would say like 90% of them. So there's an argument to be made that that's the right move because that's what the development community had already, and we're able to spend time and commit resources to. I think even once you have motion controllers in the equation, there will still be plenty of games developed for gamepad, just because not everybody always wants to stand up and move around the room and engage with their body. They might just want to sit down and relax and have a gamepad in their hand. And there's games like Lucky's Tale. They prove that it's a compelling experience. It's just right now that's all you can do with the Oculus.
That's right. And among those 30 games in the launch lineup, I think there are about maybe half a dozen or 10 or so that are kind of the essential must-plays. There's definitely content out there, but all that content needs to live on one drive. I know people have been asking, there's an issue that people have found online. You have to install all the games currently on the C drive.
That's right.
Now, Oculus has made a statement to say that they know that this is actually an issue. It wasn't intentional, and they're working on it, but it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks for them to issue a fix.
To get an update out. Yep. There isn't a workaround. If you really have no space on your C drive, you can create what's called a symlink. I'm sure you can Google it and figure out the workaround for it. Unfortunately, there is no way to get back once they release the fix. You're probably going to have to reinstall the games.
Yeah. Unfortunately, because that's a lot of people building their first Oculus systems went for maybe a low-capacity, high-speed solid-state drive as their C drive.
Yep.
It makes sense to build that way, and 512 gigs may not be enough. I mean, it's enough for the launch lineup, but it's not going to be enough for your full year of VR. Now, in terms of those systems themselves, another question that were asked is, how is performance with the min spec?
Right.
Because they gave a relatively high-end spec compared to PC games, a GTX 970.
Absolutely.
As of last year,
that would have been like a god box standard for a regular gamer.
Exactly. And we've actually been running all of our Oculus and VR games with basically a min-spec system, and I've had no performance issues whatsoever. I think part of that also, they issued an update, asynchronous time warp update, which is you get download newest GeForce drivers or AMD drivers with it right prior to launch, and that alleviates some of the frame rate issues if there were any with any of the rotation, if you dip down below 90 FPS. But with almost all the games I've tested, no frame rate problems at all, or hitching at all.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm running a 980, and I was able to get a little choppiness in VR pinball of all things, or pinball effects, because I boosted the quality setting up to ultra or whatever that is. I didn't even notice a visual difference, so it wasn't worth it. I just wanted to see what would happen. So it is possible to hit those limits, but at the recommended settings, no problem at all.
And you mentioned that there were actually graphic settings in those games. A lot of the games for VR at launch actually don't have settings, visual settings that you can change at all.
Is there just a set setting, or are they doing some kind of scaling based on your system?
I don't think they're doing scaling. I think it's a set setting. Some games, like for example, Hover Junkers on HTC Vive, you can do things like anti-aliasing and change all those. And I know you can on Pinball FX, but most games just run as is, especially Oculus Studios games, because
that's interesting. It's sort of like a console in that way, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So it is also like a console, not only in the performance, but also how you interface with the device. And Oculus Home is the front end. So it's something that's difficult. We can't actually show it because the game actually, the system doesn't reproduce it on screen. We can't game capture it. So it's just screenshots, but it's very similar to what you see, and I have seen in Gear VR. So one question is, what can you do in Oculus Home? And the answer is, right now, not much.
Well, you can buy a few games.
You can buy, you can download.
Can you add friends, or can you just respond to friend requests?
I think you can only respond to friend requests because you can't type.
Right.
Yeah, there's no typing. You interface with Oculus Home with a gaze look. You look around, you press the button on the Oculus remote or on the gamepad. You can't even join your friend's multiplayer session from the home menu.
Yeah, we couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, you need to launch the game. You can see that. I can see Jeremy's playing. You can see you're playing.
I'm online and I'm playing a game.
Valkyrie, and then I can launch Valkyrie, then get invited. It does let you launch things like Oculus Video, and there are a little more options for Twitch viewing and other things and loading up your own stuff. But there's not a lot to do.
No, I mean mainly it's a hub, right? It's a hub for the content, and it's their storefront. So it serves both as that, so that when you browse, you buy things, then you launch them, and then one of the nicest things that I think a lot of people just take for granted, having not used the developer kits, is when you exit programs, it gracefully goes back to Oculus Home, and that's actually very nice because before you used to exit and suddenly you get like windows in both panels, and it would be completely disorienting, or the screen would freeze up and you'd get dizzy. So that's all handled quite well, I thought.
I thought the integration between game and front end, even when you press the home button in the middle of a game and it goes into an overlay that you reorient or quit the game or change your volume, all of that works seamlessly. I just wish they added more social features.
Oh, you know it's coming. Yeah, absolutely.
Voice communication.
Totally.
Pinging people, seeing other things, as opposed to just being a store front end.
There's precedence for that on the consoles. I'm sure that it's coming.
Also, another question we've got asked frequently is the headphones. How are the headphones? Now, there's a built-in mic on the headset itself. The headset, we measured the length of the cable. It's about 11 feet. That you can have it tethered to your computer. On the bottom, we talked about the IP adjustment. I think the microphone's actually on the opposite side.
Oh, you can't see a hole. That's
you can't. Yep. That's why the foam or the fabric material. But the built-in headphones are actually quite good.
Surprisingly good. They look like 1980s Walkman headphones. These are very high quality. I mean, I guess very is a relative word, but I was impressed. I have some pretty nice Denon headphones at home that I use. I have no desire to put those on because these have really decent bass, nice range, and more importantly, they really allow you to adjust how much of the outside world you want to let in.
Yeah.
So, you can bend them back if you want to be able to be accessible to other people.
They bend out at an angle. They go front and back, and they slide up and down. So no matter where your ear is, it can basically reach it. And like you said, I'm very happy just using these headphones. That's one of those. It's a good thing that every gamer with the Oculus Rift is going to have it, the microphone, and the headphones, because then they can build in those voice features.
It also is unique. It's the only headset that has built-in headphones, and it's very easy to take it off for that reason.
Yes.
Using the old developer kit, I had to sometimes mentally process, which do I do first, my headset or my headphones? Oh yes, my headphones first, and if I didn't, got all tangled up.
And then even if you don't want to use the headphones, removing the actual units themselves also turns out to be super easy. All you need is a flathead screwdriver. You turn it right there, and you pop out, and surprisingly, no exposed wires.
That's super cool. Do they have a couple conductors in there? 2
contact points, and it just snaps off, and that's it. And it goes flush. This whole piece comes off.
Right. That's pretty great.
Yeah. I really like that. I mean, it's something they promised early on, and it totally delivered. Now, we talked about the length of cabling for the headset, and that ties into the camera next. Now, the way the Oculus tracks your positional system, where you are in your lateral movements in space, it uses an IR camera, and there are some embedded IR LEDs on both the front and the back of the headset. But what the camera can see has been questionable, because we knew with the DK2, that camera,
how much it could see.
We knew exactly how much it could see, because in the setup menu, you could see the lines showing your boundaries.
Yeah.
Here, there are no such lines. There's no chaperone system.
Nobody's made a line app yet. I'm sure it's coming.
Right. So in doing some tests, we found that you can actually go pretty far away from the camera.
I was super impressed.
And have it see you.
You had very good luck. We set it up, and you went away from the camera the distance of the cable, so about 11 feet, and it kept you tracked the entire time. You stood up on a little step ladder, no problem whatsoever. I did not have that much success in my office space. However, I was next to windows, and I think there might have been an IR interference thing going on. But I could probably get back maybe 6 feet from it, so not quite as far as you.
So how much you can move around the camera actually is related to how far you are away from the camera, because it's a cone. I found the best tracking is kept about 4 feet away from me, so almost a little behind my monitor is like the best spot for the camera. You can tilt it up and down for standing or sitting experiences, which I like. You can't raise it up, and there's actually no mount point. So unlike the previous version.
Good point.
Yeah, I don't know if you can actually take off the camera.
The previous version used to mount on top of your monitor.
Right.
Which I don't know. Maybe they were thinking that was too inflexible. That was just, locked you down to that point where they wanted you to be able to put it further away or in a different spot. I don't know. But when you do set it up, one nice thing about it is once you get your spot, you put on the Oculus Rift and you see the camera in the setup process, and then this make-believe laser beam comes out and scans you, and then it shows you your perimeter of where you're sort of allowed to move within its view,
right.
Which is pretty cool. So you have to sort of make sure that perimeter is accessible to you in your body as well. Like my perimeter covered my desk for a moment. That would have been bad news if I actually tried to walk in.
So it has no actual awareness of other objects in the real world. Right. You're not drawing any chaperone system boundaries yourself. That's kind of more of a technical limitation. And if you get your head too close to the camera and you move left and right, then you might fall out of that field of view. That's why you want to have that relative distance. Another thing we tested, because I have an Oculus Rift, you have an Oculus Rift, you brought your camera in, and it turns out you can actually plug two cameras into a computer and overlap and expand your tracking area.
Well, that's great. I mean, you can't buy a second camera now. But,
just by itself, right?
Yeah, but it's good to know that it works. That didn't necessarily surprise me, though, because when we went to the Oculus Days event, they had several touch demos working, and every touch demo had two cameras. So it's probably the same driver set, I would imagine.
And it works right out of the box. Now, what didn't work is if the cameras point at two headsets and we're trying to track the headsets at the same time. Like, that didn't exactly work because they're only plugged into one computer tied to that account. And then I think that's it with tracking, which was like the big question. Now we move on to the big elephant in the room. Touch. What about touch?
Touch. Well, I mean, touch is going to be great. I mean, who doesn't wish they had touch right now? In an ideal world, they'd have touch ready at launch. Maybe they'd even sell them separately if they wanted, so that you could, get the $600 version now and then spend the $200 later for touch.
Does not having touch at launch, does that diminish the Oculus Rift?
It's hard to say. I mean, right now, they have a week and a half of exclusivity, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they're the only ones on the market. Once the Vive comes out, it'll be interesting to see how the reviews compare and what the not only the critical successes, but what what people are buying and what the games are that people are really interested in playing.
I think there's also a misconception between touch and room scale. People assume that if you have touch controllers, track controllers, because Vive has both track controllers and the room scale, you have to have one or the other. I think that you can have great room scale experiences without track controllers, and you can have great track controller experiences without room scale. And so it's all about creating the best type of content for whatever the user's environment is going to be. If I'm going to be sitting from my desk, I still want track controllers, even though I'm not walking around, because I can do things like the Oculus Toy Box stuff or their medium demo, that kind of stuff. And if I have room scale, if I have the room set it up, then I definitely want the opportunity to put two opposing cameras and be able to walk around.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest component of room scale that this would be missing at this point is any kind of a system that shows you the walls in the real world, the chaperone system that the Vive has. I'm sure, I would hope, at least by the time that touch comes out, that they will implement that because it's kind of necessary if you're going to be walking around your space to see what's around you. But we said, like we said before, the gamepad experience is solid. There's clearly something there. It's not the full experience of VR that we've now had the opportunity to experience through demos of Touch and Vive, and people, are aware of that.
So one final question: is it worth it? $600.
I mean, that's a question you have to answer for yourself, right? I think, as somebody who's been waiting for VR my entire life, who's been at like every 3D movie I could possibly go to, who bought the Sony HMZ-T1 for more money than the Vive or the Oculus Rift, yes, this is definitely worth it. Absolutely. I wouldn't question that for a second. I'm excited to play games that come out. I'm excited to tinker in Unity, and this is going to be a whole new medium. And this is, I mean, absolutely, you're going to want to jump onto this at some point. Maybe not right now, but this is something like I think this is going to be the new television set. I mean, it's like asking, is TV worth it in 1950? I mean, yeah, it's going to be worth it.
And TVs back then cost a lot more than TVs today cost a lot more than $600.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking of a new monitor for my computer, am I going to spend $500 or $1,000 on a new high-end monitor, 4K monitor, or invest in a VR headset? I would go with the VR headset. It's a completely different experience. I mean, I like watching movies on this. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I would like to figure out what like if you're sitting in the movie theater in Oculus Cinema and you load up a movie, it's very watchable. I was surprised because the DK2 I wouldn't say was so much so. It felt like it was too low res. This one seemed very watchable. I would be curious what the effective resolution is of that movie screen.
Yeah, and we did mention, Oculus is out technically. People, Kickstarter backers are getting theirs. People who pre-ordered should be starting getting theirs soon.
Yeah, today.
I know a lot of people are wondering where theirs are. It's not exactly the same kind of launch as a new console launch or a new phone launch. It is a very first generation device. So if you're thinking about pre-ordering now or ordering now, it won't be available till like a couple months, till July. I think they're back ordered. So wait, see if you can see what the game selection is going to be like, the software selection, see what the ecosystem is going to be like come May, come June, and then make your purchasing decision then.
How soon do you think they're going to iterate on this thing?
I hope very fast. And that's the thing, that's what we can't tell right now. I mean, we're only 1 week into launch. I want to see, within the launch window, within the coming months, what is the pace of release going to be for content, and what is the pace of updates going to be on the Oculus side now that they have a product out in the field.
Yeah, they're definitely, I think Facebook and Valve, and hopefully Sony, they're in this for the long run. I don't think that this first generation is going to make or break this platform.
Yeah, so that's the Oculus Rift, the consumer version 1. The day is finally here. We'll have a lot more content with this in the coming days. We're going to do some game demos, some multiplayer experiences, and if you're a developer and you're working on a game, let us know and we'll check out the game out. If you have more questions about this device, let us know as well. We'll try to answer them as best as we can in the future, and we'll be covering those other headsets as well as soon as next week. So thanks a lot, Jeremy, for sharing with us your impressions of the Oculus Rift.
My pleasure.
And thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.